and military intelligence, we call it operational camouflage, the art of appearing to be exactly what the enemy expects while concealing your true capabilities until the moment of maximum tactical advantage. I've been running this operation on my own family for 23 years. Target assessment. My older brother, Garrett Fierro, age 50, regional VP at a Silicon Valley tech firm, believes success is measured in stock options and Tesla upgrades. Secondary target. His wife, Suzanne, who collects designer handbags the way I collect classified security clearances. Tertiary assets. Various aunts, uncles, and cousins who've spent 2 decades treating me like the family's cautionary tale. My designation in their operational theater, poor Dinah, the spinster sister who never figured out life, the one who rents, the one who drives a 12-year-old Subaru, the one who works some vague government thing that nobody understands or asks about. Their assessment is not entirely inaccurate. I do rent a modest 2-bedroom apartment in San Diego that costs less per month than Garrett spends on car payments. I do drive a Subaru Outback with 140,000 miles that I've never bothered replacing because it runs perfectly fine. I do work for the government in a capacity they've never bothered to understand. What they don't know, I'm a Rear Admiral in the United States Navy. I command a carrier strike group. 11 ships, 70 aircraft, 7,500 personnel, and enough firepower to reshape geopolitical reality. My modest apartment is a tactical choice. I'm deployed 8 months a year. My Subaru stays parked in long-term storage while I'm at sea aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln, which is basically a floating city with a $4 billion price tag. And the reason I'm currently sitting in my apartment at 2:30 p.m. on a Thursday, wearing civilian clothes and planning my brother's professional destruction? I'm on leave. And I'm bored. Also, I just got off a video call with my mother, who spent 45 minutes explaining why I should really consider getting more serious about life before asking if I'd thought about maybe trying online dating. When I mentioned I'd just completed a 6-month deployment coordinating operations across 3 theaters, she said, "That's nice, dear," and immediately pivoted to telling me about Garrett's promotion. So yes, I'm orchestrating a tactical strike on my own family's delusions. The mission parameters are simple. Garrett is hosting a retirement party for his boss, Lawrence Carr, at the company's main campus in Palo Alto. Lawrence is a legend in tech circles, early Google employee, now a billionaire investor. The party is tomorrow. Garrett has been planning it for 3 months. He's invited everyone, colleagues, clients, family, including me. I RSVP'd yes 3 weeks ago. Garrett responded with a text, "LOL, you sure? It's pretty fancy. Black tie." I replied, "I'll manage." What Garrett doesn't know, Lawrence Carr served as a naval intelligence officer 28 years ago. He and I have met exactly once, at a classified Pentagon briefing 6 years ago, where he consulted on cyber warfare protocols. We're not close, but he knows exactly who I am and what I do. And tomorrow, at the valet stand of his company's campus, I'm gonna make sure Garrett finds out too. I spent Friday morning doing what I always do before a tactical operation, preparing. First, I called my driver. Yes, I have a driver. Well, technically the Navy has a driver assigned to flag officers during stateside duty, but semantics. His name is Petty Officer Rodriguez, and he's currently waiting on standby in case I need transport. "Rodriguez, tomorrow afternoon I need you in dress whites with the staff car. We're going to Palo Alto." "The Lincoln, ma'am, or the Maybach?" The Navy has 2 vehicles assigned to my use, the Lincoln Town Car for official functions, the Maybach, a diplomatic gift from a foreign head of state after a joint operation I can't discuss, for more formal occasions. "The Maybach," I said. "And Rodriguez, I need you to arrive exactly 15 minutes after I do. I'll text you when I'm in position." "Understood, ma'am." There was a pause. "Should I ask what we're doing?" "Correcting a long-standing intelligence failure," I said. "Hooah, Admiral." "Wrong branch, Rodriguez." "Anchors away, Admiral." "Better." Quote. Next, I called the company's head of security, a former Marine colonel I'd worked with during a joint exercise in the Persian Gulf. I explained the situation. He laughed for 3 minutes straight, then said, "I'll brief the valet team personally. This is going to be beautiful." Finally, I selected my outfit. Not my dress whites, too obvious. Not my service dress blues, too formal. Just a simple black cocktail dress. Elegant but understated. The kind of thing that wouldn't look out of place at any upscale event, but wouldn't draw attention. Operational camouflage. Saturday afternoon, I drove myself to Palo Alto in my Subaru. The company campus was exactly what you'd expect from a Silicon Valley tech firm. All glass and sustainable wood, solar panels on the roof, a small forest of redwoods carefully preserved on the grounds. The parking lot was full of Teslas, Porsches, and Mercedes. My Subaru looked like a service vehicle. Perfect. I parked in the far lot and walked toward the main building. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the party already in full swing. White-clothed tables, catered food, people in expensive suits networking and laughing. I spotted Garrett immediately. He was near the center of the room, holding court with a group of executives. Suzanne was beside him in a dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. I bypassed the main entrance and headed for the side door that led to the valet stand. This was the key terrain, the high-traffic area where people arrived and departed, where Garrett would inevitably pass through to greet late arrivals. The valet stand was modern and minimalist, a small covered area with a digital check-in system and two young valets in matching polo shirts. They looked up as I approached. "Checking in, ma'am?" "Just meeting someone," I said, and positioned myself near the entrance where I'd be visible but not obviously waiting. I pulled out my phone and texted Rodriguez in position. "Execute in 15 minutes. Then I settled in to wait. Garrett emerged 12 minutes later with Lawrence and 3 other executives. They were laughing about something, Garrett playing the perfect host. He spotted me immediately and his expression shifted, surprise, then something that looked like concern. "Dina," he broke away from the group and came over. "Hey, you made it. I wasn't sure you'd actually come." "Wouldn't miss it," I said mildly. He looked me up and down. "You look nice. That's a pretty dress." "Thanks. Listen, before you go in," he lowered his voice, "it's a pretty high-powered crowd in there. Lots of industry people, investors, that kind of thing. Just, don't feel like you have to impress anyone. These guys can be intimidating if you're not used to corporate culture." I blinked. "That's thoughtful of you." "I just mean, your job is fine and everything, but these guys are used to talking about IPOs and market dynamics. If someone asks what you do, maybe just say you work in administration. It's easier than trying to explain the whole government thing." Behind him, Lawrence was watching us with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Sure," I said. "I'll keep it simple." "Great," Garrett clapped me on the shoulder. "Come on, let me introduce you around. Oh, but first, we should get your car to valet. Did you park in the lot?" I did. "Go grab your keys from wherever you parked and bring your car around. We've got valet service for everyone." "Actually," I said, "I'm fine leaving it where it is." "Dina, come on, it's full service. They'll park it for you and bring it back when you're ready to leave. That's the point." "I don't mind walking." Garrett's expression shifted into that particular brand of patient frustration he'd perfected over decades. "You're being weird about this. Just go get your car." Behind us, one of the executives, a man I recognized from news articles as a prominent venture capitalist, called out to Garrett. "Fierro, need you for a photo with Lawrence." "One sec," Garrett called back. Then to me, "Look, I've got to go do this photo thing. Just walk to your car, drive it up here, hand the keys to these guys." He gestured to the valets. "It's not complicated." He jogged back to the group without waiting for my response. I stood at the valet stand, watching through the glass as Garrett posed for photos with Lawrence and the other executives, watching as he laughed and glad-handed and played the part of the successful tech VP. My phone buzzed. Rodriguez, arriving in 2 minutes. I smiled. 60 seconds later, Garrett's photo session wrapped up. He headed back toward the entrance with Lawrence and 2 other executives, probably coming outside to greet more arriving guests. 30 seconds later, a black Maybach S680, worth approximately $200,000 and featuring diplomatic flags on the front fenders, turned into the campus driveway. The valets saw it immediately. Their posture changed. One of them grabbed his tablet and started typing rapidly, checking the VIP list, I assumed. The Maybach pulled smoothly up to the valet stand and stopped. Rodriguez, 6'3", built like a recruiting poster, wearing navy dress whites with his ribbons displayed and his combination cover perfectly positioned, stepped out and opened the rear door. Garrett and his group had just emerged from the building. They stopped, staring at the car. This was it. This was the moment I'd been orchestrating for 3 weeks. I walked toward the Maybach. Dina? Garrett's voice was confused. What are you? Admiral, Rodriguez said crisply, nodding to me. Your car is ready, ma'am. I apologize for the delay. Security briefing ran long. I nodded. No problem, Rodriguez. Thank you. Garrett was frozen, staring. His mouth had actually dropped open. Lawrence, however, was smiling. A slow, dawning smile of recognition and, was that amusement? Admiral Fierro, Lawrence said. He stepped forward, extending his hand. I thought I recognized you, but I wasn't certain until just now. It's been, 6 years? 6 years, 2 months, I confirmed, shaking his hand. Pentagon briefing on cyber defense integration. Right, you were presenting on naval information warfare capabilities. He turned to Garrett, who looked like he'd been hit with a stun grenade. Garrett, did you know your sister is one of the most decorated flag officers in the Pacific Fleet? Garrett made a sound that wasn't quite words. She's being modest, Lawrence continued. Admiral Fierro commands Carrier Strike Group 11, the Abraham Lincoln and its entire battle group. 7,000 personnel. 3-state recruiting territory. She's effectively the CEO of a floating city with a $4 billion operational budget. The 2 executives with Lawrence had gone very, very quiet. I turned to the valet. I need to check in my car. It's the Subaru in the far lot, space C47. Ma'am, the valet looked between me and the Maybach, clearly confused. The Subaru is my personal vehicle, I explained patiently. The Maybach is my official transport. I drove myself earlier because I wasn't on official business. Now I am. Of course, Admiral. The valet's whole demeanor had changed. I'll get your keys. Actually, Garrett said suddenly. His voice was strangled. Actually, wait. Everyone looked at him. He turned to Lawrence, his face red. Sir, I can explain. I didn't realize, she never told me she was. She works here, Garrett had said to his boss. I remembered suddenly. 3 months ago, when he'd first mentioned the party, he'd called me and said, "It's at the company campus. Don't be weird about it. I know you probably feel intimidated by the whole tech industry thing, but these are normal people. And hey, if you need some extra cash, I heard they might need additional valet staff for the event. I could put in a word." I'd hung up on him. But now I understood. He'd told people I might be working the party, possibly as valet staff. "Garrett," I said quietly, "what did you tell people about me?" He couldn't meet my eyes. Lawrence's expression had shifted from amused to something much colder. "Garrett, what did you tell people?" Garrett's voice cracked. "I might have mentioned that my sister that she was going to be here working, at the valet stand." The words landed like depth charges. One of the executives made a choking sound. Rodriguez, behind me, went rigid. I didn't need to look to know his expression had turned to stone. "You told people," I said, my voice perfectly level, "that I work here as a valet." "I didn't mean, I thought it was a legitimate side job. You're always so vague about what you do and you dress like," he gestured helplessly at me. "You drive a Subaru. You rent an apartment. You never talk about your career. How was I supposed to know you were a fucking admiral?" "You could have asked," I said simply. "I did ask. Every time I ask what you do, you say, government work, and change the subject. And every time you introduce me to someone, you say, this is my sister Dina, she works in administration. Every time Mom asks how I'm doing, you say, she's fine, still figuring things out. Every time someone asks about your family at work, what do you tell them, Garrett?" He was silent. "What do you tell them?" I repeated. "That I have a sister who's still finding her way," he whispered. Lawrence's expression was unreadable. The 2 executives had taken several steps back. At that exact moment, the valet manager, my former Marine colonel friend, approached from the security office. He was grinning like it was Christmas morning. "Admiral, your personal driver called. Shall we bring your Maybach around, or will you take the sedan today?" The line. The exact line from the cinematic core scene, delivered perfectly. Garrett's face went from red to white. His knees actually buckled. One of the executives caught his elbow. Lawrence looked from me to Garrett to the Maybach to the valet manager, and his face transformed. He started laughing, not cruelly, but with genuine, disbelieving amusement. "Garrett," Lawrence said, still laughing, "you told your guests that an O-8 flag officer who commands a carrier strike group was parking cars for tips." "I didn't know." Garrett's voice was desperate. "She never said." "Because you never asked," Lawrence said, and now his voice had gone cold. "In 23 years, you never once asked your sister what she actually does. You just assumed she'd failed." He turned to me. "Admiral Fierro, I apologize for my employee's behavior. This is embarrassing for everyone." "Not for me," I said cheerfully. "I'm having a great time." Lawrence blinked. Then he started laughing again. "I believe that. Well played, Admiral. Well played." He turned back to Garrett. "We're going to have a conversation Monday morning about judgment and assumptions. In the meantime, I think you owe your sister an apology." Garrett was staring at the ground. His hands were shaking. "Dina, Save it," I said. "We both know you're only sorry you got caught." I turned to Rodriguez. "I'll take the Maybach. I think we've accomplished our objective here." "Yes, ma'am." Rodriguez was trying very hard not to smile. I started to get into the car, then paused. Looked back at Garrett. "For the record," I said, "the last deployment was coordinating strike operations against pirate networks in the Gulf of Aden. Before that, I spent 6 months as Deputy Commander of Joint Task Force Horn of Africa. And next month, I'm being considered for a 3rd star and reassignment to Pentagon Strategic Planning." I let that sink in. "But you're right," I continued. "I do rent a 2-bedroom apartment in San Diego. Because I'm at sea 8 months a year, and it would be stupid to own a house I never live in. I do drive a Subaru with 140,000 miles, because it's reliable and I don't care about impressing people at stoplights. And I do work in government administration." I smiled. "I administer 7,500 personnel and $4 billion in assets." Garrett made it sound like something breaking inside him. "Enjoy your party," I said, and got into the Maybach. Rodriguez drove in silence for the first 10 minutes. Then, "That was the most savage thing I've ever witnessed, ma'am, and I've seen combat." "Thank you, Rodriguez. Your brother looked like he was going to throw up." I noticed. His boss was laughing. "I noticed that too." "Think he'll call you?" I considered. "Eventually. In about 6 to 8 months, once the humiliation has settled into something he can rationalize. He'll convince himself it was all a misunderstanding, that I should have been clearer, that it's partly my fault for being so private. And will you forgive him? That's the question, isn't it?" We drove in silence for a while longer. The sun was setting over the bay, turning everything gold and orange. From here, I could just barely see the Oakland shipyard, where part of my battle group was currently in port. "Rodriguez," I said finally, "do you know why I didn't tell my family what I do?" "No, ma'am." "Because I wanted to see if they'd care enough to ask. If they'd be interested in my life for its own sake, not because it was impressive or successful. I wanted to know if they'd love me, even if I really was just an administrative assistant making $30,000 a year." And they didn't," I said simply. "They were embarrassed by what they thought I was, which means they don't actually love me. They love the idea of me, if I fit their definition of success." Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. Then, "For what it's worth, Admiral, everyone in the strike group thinks you're the best commanding officer they've ever served under. Even when I make you drive me to Palo Alto to psychologically destroy my own brother? Especially then, ma'am." I laughed. I couldn't help it. Garrett called 6 days later. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. "Dina, we need to talk. What happened at the party was a misunderstanding. I feel terrible about it, but you have to understand. You never told me you were an admiral. How was I supposed to know? And the way you embarrassed me in front of Lawrence and the other executives, that wasn't okay. I could lose my job over this. Lawrence has been weird with me all week. You made me look like an idiot in front of my boss." I deleted the message. He texted 3 days after that. "We need to talk about what happened. Mom is upset. She says you're not answering her calls either." I didn't respond. 2 weeks later, my mother called. I answered, not out of any desire to reconcile, but because I was genuinely curious what spin they'd put on it. "Dina," she said. Her voice was tight. I need you to call your brother. He's very upset. I'm aware. He's worried he's going to be fired because of what happened at that party. His boss has been cold to him. That's unfortunate. Dina, you embarrassed him in front of his colleagues. That wasn't appropriate. I laughed. Actually laughed. Mom, he told his boss and multiple executives that I was working the valet stand. He told people I park cars for tips. Well, you never explained what you actually do. I've tried to explain for 23 years. Every time I mention my career, you change the subject or say, "That's nice, dear," and start talking about Garrett's promotion or Suzanne's new house. Because you're so vague about it, you say government work like it's some entry-level office job. I command a carrier strike group, Mom. I'm a rear admiral. I've been promoted 6 times. I've testified before Congress. I've coordinated operations in 3 theaters. And you've never asked for a single detail about any of it. Silence on the other end. But you know what? I continued. That's fine. That's your choice. But Garrett doesn't get to spend 2 decades assuming I'm a failure and then be angry when he finds out he was wrong. He doesn't get to humiliate me as a valet and then play victim when the truth comes out. He's your brother. And he's spent 23 years being ashamed of me for no reason other than his own shallow assumptions. That's not fair. Mom, I have to go. I've got a briefing in 10 minutes on maritime security protocols. Dina, wait. I hung up. She didn't call back. 3 months later, I'm standing on the bridge of the USS Abraham Lincoln, watching the sun rise over the Pacific. We're 3 days into a 7-month deployment, 7,500 people under my command, 11 ships in formation, a mission profile that spans from counterterrorism to humanitarian assistance to strategic deterrence. This is what I do. This is who I am. My phone is in my quarters, powered off. I won't check personal messages until we make port in Singapore in 4 weeks. I don't know if Garrett has called again. I don't particularly care. The thing about family is that we spend so much time pretending the relationship matters more than the reality of the relationship. We're supposed to forgive, supposed to make allowances, supposed to value blood over everything else. But I've spent my career learning that competence matters, that integrity matters, that trust has to be earned, not assumed. And my family failed every test that actually matters. Did I enjoy destroying my brother's assumptions in front of his boss? Yes, absolutely. It was one of the most satisfying moments of my adult life. Do I regret it? Not even a little. Because here's the thing they still don't understand. I didn't humiliate Garrett. He humiliated himself. I just provided the context that made his assumptions visible. I could have told him privately. Could have pulled him aside at some family dinner and quietly explained my rank and position. Could have let him save face. But why? Why should I protect him from the consequences of his own contempt? Why should I make it easy for him to continue looking down on me while remaining ignorant? The Navy taught me that respect has to be earned through competence, not demanded through relationship. That authority without knowledge is dangerous. That assumptions kill. My family assumed I was a failure for 23 years. They made jokes about my vague government job. They felt embarrassed by my modest lifestyle. They never once stopped to consider that maybe, just maybe, I knew exactly what I was doing. So yes, I set a trap. I orchestrated a situation where their assumptions would collide with reality in the most public, most undeniable way possible. And I'd do it again. One of my junior officers approaches. Admiral, message from Pacific Fleet Command. They're requesting your input on the strategic assessment due next week. Thank you, Lieutenant. I'll review it this afternoon. She salutes and withdraws. I look out at the water. Endless, powerful, indifferent to human drama. Out here, the only thing that matters is competence. Can you do your job? Can you lead your people? Can you make the right call when lives are on the line? Everything else is noise. My phone might be full of messages from Garrett, from my mother, from various relatives who've heard the story and have opinions. Or maybe it's empty. Maybe they've decided I'm not worth the effort. Either way, I'm here, doing what I do, commanding one of the most powerful military assets in the world. And somewhere in Palo Alto, my brother is explaining to his boss why he spent 2 decades not knowing what his own sister does for a living. I smile. Out here on the water, under the endless sky, I finally feel at home. Turns out the family you choose, the 7,500 people who serve under your command, who trust your judgment, who know exactly who you are and what you're capable of, matters more than the family you're born into. And that's not tragic. That's liberation.